The VAR Show. The one place for your weekly football update.
Hello, very warm welcome to the VAR Show, the show which talks about all the various major football leagues in detail. Today we are going to be on the theme of interviews, and we have former Chelsea player and a very experienced scout, Mr. David Lee, with us today. So without wasting much time, first I would like to thank David for coming on the show. Thank you so much and welcome to the show. And I would like to begin by asking you, how are you and what are you doing during this pandemic period?
Hi, welcome. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Not much, sitting in the garden, sunbathing, taking the dog out for a walk. Obviously, we've just got some Bundesliga back on in the last week. We've had a little bit of football, and we've had the news that the Premier League will return on June the 17th. So it's good news that it's coming back. But yeah, it's been tough. Fortunately, none of my family have suffered anything, which is good. But obviously, there's been a lot of people that have had the virus. But just keeping safe, really, and just doing the normal things.
So we'll talk about a lighter topic, that is football, in comparison to what's happening around the world. So recently you're working for Arsenal as a scouting players in UK and over Europe. So what was your a day like? What if you had to describe a day in your life as a scout for Arsenal? What was it like?
Okay, so it depended. If I was going, first of all, I'll tell you if it was in England. So if it was a Saturday morning, for example, I would go and watch an under 16 or under 18 Premier League game or Alliance League, which is like the leagues of the lower clubs in the football. So I'd go and watch a game in the morning at 11 o'clock, and then in the afternoon I'd go and watch a Premier League game or a Championship game or a League One or League Two game. So I would go to these games possibly with targets in mind that I need to watch and do reports on, or failing that, I would go abroad. I would go to Holland or Germany or France or Spain and do the same thing, go and watch a game or a couple of games. So my days are very different. One day I could be going to watch someone in Holland. The next day I could just be going to the training ground for a meeting, or I could just be watching games in England. So it varies a lot. It's a real, you don't know where you are from one day to the next. I might get a phone call on a Monday saying, oh, you need to go to Holland on Wednesday. So it's varied, very varied.
So as you said, you travel a lot to maybe scout players. If you could, if you are comfortable, can you share with us something that you would look? What was common when you were scouting players? Something for maybe all the positions.
For me personally, the first thing I look for is football intelligence. How intelligent is a player on the pitch, no matter what age they are. I look for that football intelligence, and then I look for the attitude of the player. I'll also look at his work rate. Does he work hard? If he's not going to work hard at a young age, will he work hard as he gets older? So, a lot of the Premier League, you don't need to look at things like that, because that they're at a level. They don't need to, they do need to work hard, but they work hard because they've got to that level. But when you're watching lower level, you need to just have a little look at, sometimes their attitude. They might be good players, they might be good in the league below, but to get in the Premiership, you need to be, you need to have everything, and work rate, attitude is certainly one of that. So that's the sort of things I look at when I first go and watch a player.
So you have even worked as a chief scout for Bristol City Football Club. So
Yes.
what was the difference in maybe infrastructure or the money that is available for you, working maybe in comparatively a small club in Bristol to compare to Arsenal?
Yes, it's a big difference. Obviously, we're looking. Well, I was at Bristol City. I were looking at players that at the time were in the Championship, whereas when I was at Arsenal, I was looking at players in the Premier League. So you got two ends of the spectrum. You got the ones here and then. But sometimes when you work without being disrespectful to Bristol City, when you work for a lower club, you can recommend more players, because I'm looking for the real top player at Arsenal, whereas when I'm looking for players at Bristol City, they're not the top players that they're going to go and spend 50 million on. So sometimes when you work for a smaller club, it can be more advantageous because you can recommend more players.
So you even worked as a assistant manager for quite a short period, like I think with Northampton.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
do you like scouting, and which one do you prefer actually, being an assistant manager or scouting?
I think at the moment I prefer to do scouting. When I first got my break into coaching in 2006, Dennis Wise, an ex-teammate of mine, was manager at Swindon. So he gave me the job of youth and reserves at Swindon. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a very, very good job for me. I enjoyed working with the young lads. I'd been in that position previously years ago, so I understood what they needed, how they needed to progress to make their careers. And unfortunately, Dennis left to go to Leeds, and I left soon after because the new manager brought his own staff in. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then the reason I was at Northampton was previously to that, I was at Bristol City. Gary Johnson gave me a job. I was development coach. And then when Gary left Bristol City, he ended up at Northampton, and I just left Bristol City and he offered me the role there. So I got to do that. Again, we weren't there very long, but it's quite tough at the lower end of coaching, unless you're at a top Premiership or top Championship club. It's not easy because you ain't got a lot of money to spend, and some of the players you want to get, you can't because you can't afford them. But the answer to your question is I actually prefer scouting at the moment. Having said that, I would go back and do a youth team job if someone wanted me to do that. I thoroughly enjoyed that side of it.
So being an experienced scout, you have seen quite a lot and at all the levels. What would you if you had to jot down some maybe softwares or maybe some things that a new scout would need? What would you advise them to have?
In terms of software?
Yeah, maybe to analyze games or something like that.
Well, we got our own system. Well, I say we. When I was at Arsenal, we had our own system. But you've got Wisecout, you've got Huddle. These are two of the ones that people, you can learn a lot from them. I think Wisecout generally is a very good tool. You can get most of the games, I think, 24 hours after they've played, sometimes a lot quicker, depending on how much you pay for your package, which is like anything. The more you pay, the better package you can. But scouts can certainly learn a lot from Wisecout. I tend not to do a lot of video work if I can. I was privileged to work for Arsenal, so I get the chance to go to the games, but sometimes you have to watch the games because you've got no other choice. If you haven't got the funds to go abroad for your club, then you have to watch them. But also there's an app called AI Scout, which I am involved with at the moment. It's just come out. We have got this app that I thoroughly recommend all the viewers on here to have a look at. It's in its infancy stage at the moment, but over the next couple of weeks, months, this app will really help a scout to prepare for what it's like and also to watch players all over the world.
So you had your ties or your roots at Chelsea during your playing days. Was it difficult to go and work for Arsenal?
Yes, it was. I mean, I met with Chelsea previously to working for Arsenal, and at the time they had nothing available. But the way I look at it, it's just a job. But obviously, my heart is still at Chelsea, and for me, that would be an ideal move to me to get to move back into scouting would be at Chelsea. I've been in contact with them, and we'll see what happens. But it wasn't too difficult. It's a job. It's a little bit like Mark Hughes when he went as a Man City manager, having played for Man United. And I'm thinking, if someone like that can get around it, I'm pretty sure I can do, a similar kind of thing.
So, as a scout, how does it feel, or what is the best moment when someone you have scouted makes it, big?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, in the industry I'm in at the moment, it's kind of not one person would be recognised of bringing that. It's kind of more of a team effort. Yes, okay, if you see a lad at 10 years of age and no one else has ever seen him and you bring him to the club and then he goes on to make it, brilliant. Because we've had a few like that. A guy called Sean O'Connor found Jack Wiltshire when he was very young. But the the sort of between 14 and 20 now, I would say that it's more of a team effort. We would all contribute in some way. Like, you know, it's like about 3-4 years ago, I went to Azerbaijan to watch the under 17 Euros, and Kai Havertz, who's now a big cheese in Germany, I recommended him straight away after like 45 minutes of watching him. I thought, we've got to go and sign him. It's okay when they come off, but it's the ones you sort of recommend them and think, oh, maybe, you know, I shouldn't have done that because he's not going to be. But it's a chance you take. I mean, I remember Wenger said something similar to, if you make a mistake, don't worry about it because you're never going to get everyone right. And he's right in that. You know, not every manager, even Sir Alex, didn't get every signing right. So it's just a case of you have to believe in your own ability. Even if you go to a game and you see a player and no one else likes him, but you like him, don't back down. Just say yes, you know, because if you have got the inkling that he's going to be a top player, then you must stick with it. Don't listen. Now, there's a lot of scouts, unfortunately, I call them telephone scouts, where they listen to everyone else and they never make their own opinion. So I like to think that I make my own opinion on players, whether it be good, bad, if I'm right or wrong.
So, you know, like, generally, I have read a book. Okay, it was by Michael Calvin, and he describes the scouting job as a very, very, you know, like unglamorous, you know, like where you do not get paid well. And luckily, you have you have been involved with big teams, and you were quite. I think you didn't have that problem. Do you think there's a problem with how the scouts how the organization is set up for scouts, where they will get furloughed during the pandemic? Like, I spoke to a scout from, I think, Brentford, who got furloughed during this period. And do you think that's a problem, or do you think that the FA should look at it?
I think where you're coming from is there is a lot of money at the top clubs. Unfortunately, the smaller clubs will have to furlough, because if there's no football going on, then I think, you know, they're not going to get paid. Well, they are going to get paid. They're going to be furloughed. But I don't think it's really a problem. I just think it's the way of the world that, you know, the top clubs have more money to scout because they're at a top level. Now, it's not really. I've not really got an answer to you know, if it's fair or not, because I think in life there's things that happen where, you know, top people get more money than the people at the bottom who work. You know, but there's a lot of scouts who, you know, if you're good at your job, you will get to the top clubs. They're always looking for better scouts, and I know that for a fact. That if you're at games and you're persistently being there and doing things, someone will find out how good you are, and that's how you get your jobs. Because I was working for the FA before I worked for Arsenal, and I got a phone call, would I be interested in coming to Arsenal? Now, I didn't speak to them or anything. They rang me. So maybe word gets round that you're good at your job.
So, you know, like, I'll again talk back about your Arsenal time, because that was the latest job as a scout. And you have worked under quite a lot of managers, you know, during that short period under Arsenal, during the Arsenal period, I think under Wenger, then Unai, and I think Arteta also. No,
I left before Arteta.
Okay, so at least you worked under Unai and Arsene Wenger. So, you know, did your targets change according to the different managers?
Yeah, obviously every manager has their own targets. Our principles never change in what we're looking for and the type of player we're looking for. But obviously targets change with different managers, which is pretty obvious with every club, really. So when Wenger was there, you know, we had a different chief scout who was in charge of us all, Steve Rowley. He would tell us the targets. You know, you'd have meetings at the start of the season, during the season, at the end of the season. But everyone was only a phone call away from finding out. But sometimes, you know, you go to a game and you wouldn't know your target. You get sent to a game, and I think that's quite nice, because it's very easy just to go to a game and pick a target and do a report on him because you know them. But sometimes if you go to a game with just a blank canvas, it kind of brings the best out of you sometimes, because you then have to think for yourself a little bit more and things like that. So it's quite clever. It's not like a trap. It's just sometimes people do that just to make the scout think a little bit more rather than just give them the easy option.
So, you know, like, I'll go to your playing days. Suppose you had to scout David Lee when he was playing. Would you recommend him to Arsenal?
Real Madrid straight away. No, I do. I would, because you know, I think like the way I used to play, you know, obviously people will tell you different, but I was very comfortable on the ball, you know, and nowadays it's very different. I would either like to think I could play just in front of the back four or at the back, but when I played, you always had two centre forwards, so you're always. But now there's only one, so as long as I had the right partner alongside me, I'd be fine.
So you know, like since you have worked with high caliber scouts and high caliber people,
Yeah.
what is the one myth associated with scouting? You know?
One myth.
Yeah.
In what way? What do you mean?
Like maybe people assume maybe like some misconception people have about scouts or something like that.
Okay.
Like if I'll give you an example. For example, we always look down upon agents, like as in they are like they convince or they unsettle the players.
Yeah.
So similarly, is there any myth related to scouts?
I think if you ask a lot of scouts, a lot of them will tell you they're vastly underpaid for the work they do. It's a lonely job at times. You know, you troll up and down the motorway, you go abroad on your own, and if you work for not a big club, I think you can be underpaid at times. But I suppose you accept that contract at the start of it, so you know what you're earning. But I think the whole system probably does need a little bit of a shake up, and you know, it's a very important job. You know, bringing 40, 50, 100 million pound players in, and you're doing the work you do, you should be paid a little bit more. I think that's just my personal opinion, and I think a lot of them do think they're underpaid.
So you know, like you have gone and scouted a lot of players and watched them play. Have you ever been like, wow, this is a player I have to recommend?
Yeah, I think, like I said to you when I watched Kai Havertz in Azerbaijan, but also, you know, there's youngsters that the names will be irrelevant to people at the moment. But I watched Mbappe play against who did they play? They won 5-0 at the Parc des Princes. He scored 4 in 13 minutes. He was just sensational. So little things, you know, when I go to games like that. But there's a lot of players where you say, yeah, I'd like to sign them, but obviously we're competing with Liverpool, Chelsea, Man U, Man City at the moment, and you know, a lot of them are because Arsenal. Well, when I say we, when I was at Arsenal, we weren't in the Champions League. It's a little bit difficult to sort of attract them.
So these days, a lot of stuffs are being related to data. Like you have a lot of datas which are being read, and I think Arsenal was one of the front runners in having a full scout-based database about most of the players all over the world. In fact, I think Arsene Wenger set up a very amazing database about all that. So, are you comfortable like with working with data, like people who do not actually watch games like how you do, but they maybe map out the data of the players and recommend to the coach or something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. Like I said to you earlier, I'd rather go and watch with the naked eye. But I'm happy. We had a brilliant system called Stat DNA that Arsenal through Wenger, and an American guy who set it all up. We also got data guys who will send me facts and that. And also we had a guy that would continuously send videos of players that he thought were good through the stats, which is great. I got no problem with that. And then he would send them. If you didn't agree with him, then you just sort of, okay, in my opinion, because it's all about opinion at the end of today's game. You know, that's the big thing. But we also have lots of stuff sent through. We also had a guy at Arsenal who used to send you all details of players that made their debut up and down the country, youngsters that we then follow up, because obviously we can only go to one game on a Saturday at professional level. So he would scour the games and put little things together, packages, and send them to you, and then you took it on from there. So yeah, I'm comfortable with data. It's not something that I would sign the player on the strength of him being good at this without seeing him. Me personally, I'd like to go and see him.
So, you know, like I'll ask you one not final, I have two questions left. Okay, so this question I will ask
no
you,
problem.
Like, suppose you're going to scout a game tomorrow and you have two players playing, Messi and Ronaldo, whom would you recommend if you had to recommend one guy?
Messi.
Why? What if Ronaldo scores a
just
hat-trick?
Well, on the day then it'd be Ronaldo. It depends, because obviously you report on the day, depending. Now you have to give it an opinion on that day. But if they both had good games, then I think I'd just blunt for Messi.
So
only slightly.
When you scout, do you go and look at their family background also and all that?
Yeah, we have people who do that, but also you try and make this, without sort of giving the game away. You try and do your homework, you do diligence on players. You ring up a few people you might know at the club. Because of my association with football for a long time, if there's a player at Bristol City, for example, I'd like to think I could speak to someone to find out what he's like as a person, his home life, and all that. That becomes very important, and the more money you're going to spend on someone, the more information you have to have on him. I think if he's got an agent, you'd know who the agent is, and then it would probably just go from there. You'd ask lots of questions and just try and find out, because the last thing you want to do is spend 20 million on a player and find out that he's not really the character you thought he was.
So on that note, I'll ask you one final question. Okay, so if you had to advise young scouts about how to go about their business, what piece of advice would you give them?
Firstly, I would say, if you believe a player is a good player, don't be swayed by anyone else. If your mind's made up, then just stick with it. And secondly, forget all these biases where you heard what people say. Oh, he's this, he's that. Always make your own opinion. Always have your own opinion on the player, and go with your gut. If you think your gut feeling is he's a good player, go with it. Don't be swayed and listen to anyone else, and don't worry what anyone else says about that player, because otherwise you'll then go, oh yeah, he's good, or actually is he? So you go, if you see a good player, stick with it. Don't believe anything else what other people say, and always believe in your own ability, because you're a scout for a reason, and you're at a good club for a reason, because you're good at your job. So just stick with it. Stick with your own decision.
Yeah. So David, thank you so much for talking to me, and I wish you all the best.
No problem at all.
Jobs.
Anytime, give me a shout.
Sure.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.